From the Daily Reporter, this is Ethan Duran. Welcome to Brews and Blueprints, a podcast about construction and development across Wisconsin. I'm Ethan Duran of the Daily Reporter, and I'm with Pat Kressin, the current Vice President of Business Development at GRAEF. The company announced Kressin will be the new president in 2025, stepping in for John Kissinger. Kissinger will remain CEO until he retires, and Kressin has been with the company for nearly 30 years. Thanks for joining us today, Pat.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan. I really appreciate it.
Tell me a little bit about GRAEF and what they do.
It's a really big question, but we've been in business since 1961, headquartered in Milwaukee, and we were originally founded by Lou GRAEF, Bob Schlamer, and Lynn Anholt. And for many, many years, we were called GRAEF, Anholt, Schlamer and Associates. It was maybe 20-ish years ago where we changed the name to GRAEF. It just rolls off the tongue a little bit better. But as a firm, we were originally founded as a structural engineering firm. And since that time, we expanded into transportation, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil engineering, planning, landscape architecture, and many other allied services. And we do this for many public and private clients throughout the country. We have 10 offices at the moment and are continuing to look to grow.
What's GRAEF's work been like for the past few years, at least in the Milwaukee area? What are some of the latest landmark projects?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work over the last few years has been a pretty good heavy dose of municipal type of projects and DOT projects, where we've been working on a study right now for reconnecting neighborhoods on 175, some improvements along North Avenue. We just had a grand opening at the Germantown Department of Public Works facility. I think that was earlier this week, which is really exciting. And then on the private side, a lot of other really interesting projects locally, like the Couture, 333, and a few other really just great projects.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. What has your work and school background been like before you joined the company?
Well, that's a great story. So I grew up in Cedarburg and went to high school in West Bend. So we kind of lived out in the country. And I knew early on that I wanted to go to college, but my parents really didn't have the funds. So I had to figure a way out. And my aunt helped me figure that out when I was a teenager by talking me into going caddying. I had no idea what a caddy was, never seen a golf course, never played golf, didn't know much about it. But at age 13, I started caddying and just fell in love with the work and the sport. And what I loved about the work was meeting so many great people. And I got to a point where I was a regular caddy for like Bob Brightman, Jerry Boyle, and others, and it was just really fun. And I continued to grow at that golf course in Mequon to the point where I was working in the bag room and then working ultimately in the pro shop. And through that journey, I learned about this program that's called the Evans Scholarship that is funded by Western Golf Association. And, you know, I didn't know much about it, but I worked towards that, and I applied, and then I received that scholarship, which gave me a full ride to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I went to school, and I was either going to be a lawyer or I was going to be an accountant, and I wasn't sure which, until I started taking those classes and realized, man, this is really dull, and I needed to find something else. So I'm like, well, I've always been good with math, and I've always been great at art, so I'm going to be an architect. Well, I went down to the bursar's office and tried to sign up for architecture. Well, to find out that there is no architecture program at Madison, it's in Milwaukee. And so I have this full ride to Madison. I needed to figure out plan B. So plan B was I was going to get a degree in landscape architecture, which a good friend of mine talked me into. And then I was going to get a master's in architecture. Well, I got done with my undergrad and just fell in love with landscape architecture. And I always was like, this is really great. I really just kind of lucked into this. And then I always kept thinking, man, I'm going to continue my career, but I need to go become more worldly. I need to work for one of these big landscape architecture firms. And I got all these job offers coming out of school. And I didn't realize that these firms were great, but when you're 22 years old, they don't pay you very much. And I really couldn't afford to go live in Denver on some of the salaries. And my father had worked with the head of architecture, industrial architecture at GRAEF, a guy by the name of Terry Mooney. And my dad gave him my resume, and they gave me a job offer, and it was a little bit more than anywhere else. And so I decided to take it. And I planned on always leaving. I was always going to go back to one of those big firms or one of those cool cities, but we just kept winning these fantastic projects. And it was every project I was like, oh, I'm going to leave after this one. But, we won the Milwaukee Art Museum. And so I got to work with Calatrava and Dan Kiley. I was, in my 20s, and it was really just an awesome experience, creating such a great project for the city, but also, seeing these world-class designers work. And then I was going to leave after that. And then we won the first renovation of Bayshore. Well, then I was going to leave after that. And then we started working on all these golf course community projects where we were working with Arthur Hills and Pete Dye and courses all over, the world. And then I was going to leave after that. And we just kept winning these great jobs. And I kept getting more opportunity at GRAEF. And the rest is history.
It just got better and better, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about GRAEF has been we allow people that have passions to explore them. As long as they're successful, you can continue to explore that, which is, I think, the testament to why the firm is so great. And we have such a strong group of leaders, and so many people, celebrate 40, 45 years at the firm, which is really fantastic.
What are some of the skills you picked up from caddying that sort of carry on to your career right now? What were some of the lessons learned that help you today?
Yeah, I learned early on that the more someone liked you or liked hanging out with you, your better your tip was. So making sure you connected with people on a personal level was really great. Finding out about what they liked, so you could actually have a conversation about things that interested them, not me. I learned listening was great. You also learned when to be quiet and not talk, which is also a good skill to have, because sometimes that's your best answer, is to say nothing.
Very good advice. Can I ask what it was like working on the museum with Calatrava?
Yeah, it was very daunting at first. I'd go into these, us and Dan Kiley kind of got brought in like a quarter way through the project. And so as I got inserted to lead the site development, I was going into these meetings with, 75 people, talking about details of arches or, the brise-soleil. And then I would have, my piece that my job was really to take Dan Kiley's dream and make it into something that people could build. And it was really fabulous just working and seeing all those people. I realized that we could really do almost anything. And we actually did. We created new products on that job. We had a problem with those large pools at the north and south end because they were designed to have that water jet to go about 125 feet high, and the pools are only aren't that wide to capture the water in case a big wind came. They could lose so much water that the pumps would burn out. And so we were trying to find solutions. How do we build a paving system that looks like a garden that you would see in France, but allow all the water to go into a drain? Because, those two things don't really align. If you wanted to protect or keep all the water, you would make it out of concrete, right? And so what we did is we worked on making our own mix of joint material with Portland cement and sand. And then we found a company in Canada that was also experimenting with the same type of stuff, and we collaborated with them. And now that's a product that we use on almost every landscape architecture project we do. It's called polymeric sand. But we worked on coming up with that on that job, as well as some other unique ways of how the fountain was originally illuminated with fiber optics. And it was really just great that we were always innovating. And I think I was so young, I didn't know any better. So it was really great to just keep pushing the envelope.
Now, the Milwaukee Art Museum is, an obvious staple of the city's lakefront, but there's a new addition now, recently completed, the Couture. Pat, do you want to talk a little bit about that? What's the latest, and how does it feel wrapping up such a humongous project, even in the years after completing something already iconic such as the art museum?
Yeah, we had a few other projects in the middle there too, Discovery World and et cetera. Well, the Couture, which, was something that kind of came out of our transportation's work on doing what was called the Lakefront Interchange, which is kind of what helped lead to some of these places or parcels. And the Couture, once they selected Rick, it was really great working with Matt Rinka and his team on creating what that vision would be. The total vision isn't quite realized. We need to work on having the bridges reconnected, one from the lakefront to the Couture over Lincoln Memorial Drive, and one from the Couture over to Donald Park, to really see that true vision that Mike Cudahy had in the lakefront master plan. And that will really be the most fantastic part. If we can get those bridges in, then you'll be able to just walk from anywhere downtown to the lakefront without, or ride your bike or whatever you may want to use without ever having to cross Lincoln Memorial Drive at the surface. And that's where these projects are so impactful. I mean, they're 1+1, and in a lot of cases, 1+1=5. And that's what the exciting part is, been for my career, is working on these projects, creating something unique, something people love, something that makes, financial sense as well. And having it just push the city forward even more.
Let's pivot to talking about GRAEF in your new position. As the next president, what sort of vision do you have for the company?
I have my vision, but one thing that GRAEF is a very collaborative culture. So I'm going to be working with my senior leaders to kind of come up with a joint vision. But I can tell you the backbone of it is really going to be, our people. We're going to focus on developing their talents, giving them tools to be successful, helping them grow as individuals, just like the opportunities that were given to me. Because what I would like to continue to do is strengthen all of our technical abilities. I would like to continue to grow our service lines. I'd also like to add more locations. I think GRAEF has been a trusted advisor of many clients, and they take us with them wherever they do projects. And we'd like to do that more. And I think by us doing it more, it also allows us to give back to the community. One of the big things for us is really strengthening the STEM programs throughout this country and finding ways to get more young people interested in engineering, architecture, construction, and increasing the diversity of people that are interested in those programs. We're a big sponsor and believer in a program that's called the ACE Mentorship Program that reaches these kids in an early stage. And I think just by us continuing to look to grow and help that program, that's going to really help our people and ultimately help our communities.
How about your relationship with your predecessor, John Kissinger? What has that been like?
Well, I've been working for John for probably 22 of my 29 years at GRAEF. And so we have a great working relationship. We're friends. We do things together. We I think, look at the world in a lot of the same ways. And we both love GRAEF. So I think for our relationship moving forward, we've already talked about things that he wants to transition right away and things that we're going to work on, but I'm going to really need his help as well as our firm as we move into our fourth generation. And GRAEF has got a lot of other great leaders, Ken Greavy, Lori Rosenthal, and a few others that are going to be retiring, that we're going to have to continue to learn from them. Now, the great thing is they've all volunteered they want to retire, they'll all volunteer to help. So it's really exciting for us to kind of move into this next generation, but know we have some, several hundred years worth of experience there to help us, on the sideline when we need it.
Now, you've had an extensive career in so many fields, and I'm thinking about, homing in on business development in particular. What advice do you have for others looking to enter the field and get into a position like you are today?
I think the first thing is just realize that business development is connecting with people. And you want to always be honest. You want to be upfront and realize that there's nothing you can't accomplish. I think what has made me successful on the business development front is coaching my team with that mindset of there's no project we can't do. The people we're competing against, they're just other people, that do what we do. And look for those areas to have, win-wins, value propositions that are that your client wins, something that you can offer that really is successful for them. And once you start looking at what's successful for your client, then you can figure out the operations of how do you deliver that for your client. And that's where I think that little slice, or just how you flip that around a little bit, is the difference between winning more work than not.
Was there anything else you'd like to talk about? Any events coming up that you want to make people aware of?
I'm not sure on the event side. We have been really successful in the last month here of winning all sorts of awards. So we've just been awarded a national award for our structural engineering at the Baird Center. So we're going to be accepting that award in, I think, about 5 weeks here out in Las Vegas, which that's exciting. John Kissinger was just named a fellow of ACEC, which that's super exciting. We had a young woman, Tammy Pierce, just made cranes 40 under 40, and she's in her Chicago office. So there's a lot of great awards we've been winning, and it's because those people put in a lot of work, and nice to get the recognition. And it's always great to celebrate those types of wins.
Well, that's great news. Congratulations.
Well, thanks, Ethan.
Thanks for being on the show, Pat.
I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.